All right, so welcome to this very special episode. I'm Danielle Lynn, and I'm joined by Kyle Lipton. Hi, Kyle.
Hey Danielle, nice to be here.
Oh, it's very fun to be here in our rectangular spaces.
Yes.
So we're having a very open sort of conversation because, funny enough, you and I, Kyle, met in a very open way. Actually, kind of interesting because the topic that really comes up to me when I'm connecting with you, synchronicity and being in flow. Actually, tell
Yes.
me a little bit about that with you. Like, I just want to let you just jump in. Tell me about what synchronicity and flow mean to you now.
All right, cool. So in this moment, synchronicity and flow to me means just being aware because synchronicities are always happening. So the more aware you are, the more kind of meta you can see the synchronicities. So it's like, on one hand, maybe it first manifests as like, okay, I'm seeing a 222, so that means I'm in flow, or I'm like see repeating numbers, so that means I'm in flow. And then it's another thing to have another awareness of like, oh shit, every single time I see 222, that means I'm repeating that same thing that's really awesome in my life where I go and do this really awesome thing. And flow is, I guess flow really to me is who we are. Like we are flow. And I think a lot of times like people are chasing like a flow state without really realizing they are flow. So it's like chasing love, but realizing you are love. And it's a lot of people just decide to swim upstream the flow instead of down the stream. And that's why there's a lot of resistance and struggle versus just kind of pivoting 180 and going the other direction.
I dig that. I dig that. You're using a word I love lately, pivoting.
Pivot. Yeah.
That's a big one when it comes to synchronicity because we use our minds. Well, we've sometimes learned to use our minds a lot to try and figure things out. But like you were saying, synchronicity and being in flow, that's all happening right now. And our ability to pivot with the situation or experience, that's so key. Curiously, you use a lot of really interesting terms like, no, I love it. Like it's a very tapped in, turned on kind of vocabulary you're using here. I'm curious, when did you start becoming aware in your life, other than now?
Right.
When did you start becoming aware of this kind of state of being, or is that something that you've always felt very connected to?
Yeah. There's an interesting way I'll answer that. So one, it's, yes, I've been on this personal growth path for a minute since I've been about 14. It started out with just like playing basketball and I would practice so hard and then I would get on the court during the games and I would just play terribly. And then I basically was like, okay, I don't want to play terribly anymore. Go to YouTube, looked up unlimited YouTube videos on how to become more mentally tough and be more confident. And through a series of YouTube rabbit holes and personal growth events and kind of just soul searching, it was a very, I feel like a lot of people are on this journey of just this more casual sort of, or gradual rather, not casual, of
Could be
ascending.
casual.
You know, maybe you start out with like how to turn your negative thoughts to positive thoughts. Then you go to Tony Robbins and then, 2 years later, you're in a jungle with like some shaman banging a drum by your ears. And you're like, how the? So it's kind of like that for me. I've gotten more woo as time has expanded. I don't know if just time expands, but that was pretty cool. And yeah. Yeah, that's what I got to say on that.
I dig it. Yeah. I think.
Oh, wait, one more thing I just want to say.
Go for it.
It's also, and maybe you've experienced this too, it's sort of this reconnecting to that state of being that I had when I was a kid. But it's not until now that I've had the awareness that I felt like that when I was a kid, if that makes sense. Cool. Awesome. You get me.
That's two of those. Yeah.
I dig it.
I do. Well, I mean, okay, I'm going to jump on this excitement and inspiration because I think I think so many of us, and I am just knowing, tuning into this, that anyone who's watching this is really vibing with that as well. I know that this is something like there's, in my perspective, perception, there's really no coincidence with this kind of stuff. We're vibing at a certain level. We're really resonating, drawing in certain people who are at certain places. And I know this is a really common thing where we have these truly perceptive, sensitive, conscious kind of people, especially as kids, they really knew this stuff and almost had it, shaken out of them, maybe not necessarily physically, but emotionally, or just kind of being in this place and coming back to this place now, coming back to that awareness is sort of like that remembering, that reconnecting. It's not like, oh, I'm learning this is really new to me. It's more like, right. Yeah. I get this. I get this. And I really resonate with that too, because it was, I think that was something that was unconsciously intense for a lot of us who were really sensitive, because it's almost as though, we were living in an Alice in Wonderland sort of world, and everyone was calling it normal. But, you meet someone or see an experience, you're like, this just doesn't feel right to me. But so much, people are told, just, get over your feelings, just do this. And now we're kind of relearning how to connect to like that part of us. So I really get that.
Yeah. It's like the difference between, I think it would just be such a great shift to have more people realize it's not personal development, but it's really just self-realization, and to really get that and to realize, because a lot of people, and it's transitioning now, and I feel it's just going to be more painful the more that we don't make that shift, because people are like putting all of their bullshit and then they're just putting personal development on top of it, which is good. It's kind of like a 20% shift or a 10% shift, but they're still at this sort of base level tension, fear. I'm still not going for my purpose, but I'm doing affirmations in the mirror type thing, which is awesome. And there's a deeper layer to it that I feel like we're all being invited into. And it's just getting more painful the more we resist that.
Okay. Totally feel that. Here's an interesting one, like a little pivot we'll do. Kind of on that.
All right.
Kind of on that thing. Right? Because I've been really feeling that too. And of course, like, hey, I'm all for personal development. I'm all for, like, we're always moving from wherever we're at with the knowings we have, with the understandings we have, which is super cool. But I also agree with you that lately there'd been like this undercurrent that for a while I didn't have a voice for, especially when it came, like, let's grab a certain topic here, like especially when it came to something like manifesting, because I know that's been like a real hot thing for the last little while, right? And which is cool, because there's a lot of principles there that are, really connected to reality creation, but there's that subtle thing where a lot of people are almost grabbing onto manifest. There's this subtle thing. I will throw this in there. Laughter is one of the best alchemies. At least I love it. So thank you. Master alchemist, Kyle. So manifestation, right? A lot of people I've noticed, at least in a mainstream way, have been understandably trying to use manifestation, not necessarily, they've been exploring it, excited about it, but they're still almost using it as a way to do what you described, just like kind of put like a candy-coated sheen over the the stuff we don't want to leave. Oh, if I just manifest enough money, then right?
Right.
What's your take on that? I'm curious, your perspective.
Well, one of the things that came up for me is, so I'm in this pretty big Facebook group. It's a public group, and a lot of like law of attraction, Abraham Hicks people. And I think fundamentally, like, what she's preaching is awesome. And I think a lot of people misinterpret it. And like one of the posts that cracked me up a bit was, there was this lady and she was like, I just really want my phone back. And if this stuff's supposed to work, how come my phone's not back? I don't want to get a new phone. Any pointers or suggestions? And it's like, that type of mentality that I feel like people can get in with manifestation. It's like, you gotta pivot a little bit to the right, and it's just you're almost there. But I think manifestation really is about intention, commitment, desire, and then also a lot of it is releasing guilt and shame, right? Because a lot of us, we want things and then we're like, but I don't. Here's a good thing to do. Like, for example, if someone on the podcast is wanting to manifest money, it's like, okay, if let's say you were to make $20,000 tomorrow, the next day you are at the table with your parents, how are they going to react? And then you can get a good look at really like where you're showing up unconsciously. And it's like, one, maybe you feel like I shouldn't have that much money, or maybe you feel like, oh, they're going to try and take some of my money. And I think the more just clear we can get in the relationship with ourselves and in the relationship to really what we desire, and to own that, and to realize that those desires have been really printed on our soul for a reason to manifest them. I think it'll be a really, really powerful shift for a lot of people.
Yes. Oh, yes. I feel that. Interesting you say that too, because that's one of the fundamentals of manifesting, which is, they even talk about this, like, feel it, have it, be it, resonate in that space. And I think a lot of times, we think it, we're like, well, yeah, it feels good, I'm happy because I have it, but it's not the action, right? Kind of like
Right.
The difference between thinking of how good you'll feel when you have it and imagining that equilibrium state, like living at equilibrium state where you actually do.
Yeah.
Which is why they say, they talk about resistance, and the less resistance you have to manifesting something. Like if you're just like, oh yeah, a banana would be cool, and then suddenly someone's like, want a banana? And you're like, cool. But that's the non-resistance manifestation that they kind of talk about, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's so good. And one thing that I'll say on that, it's like, I think a lot of us confuse like resistance. Like, I know for me, a pattern that I've had that showed up quite a bit would be, I get inspired by a lot of stuff. I'm a jack of all trades in one sense, and a lot of things just really interest me. But what I did is I would surf around a bunch, and I would get to this certain point in my own path, and it'd be like, oh, like I like feel resistant to it. And then I'm like, let me just go check out something else I'm inspired by. And then what I noticed was unconsciously, it was a pattern of like, if I would have just developed a relationship with that resistance and actually moved through it, there was a lot of gold on the other side of it. So I think it also takes a really high level of discernment to know like it may be really uncomfortable to have that conversation with your parents, and you might have resistance to it, but you can also tune in and see if that's the right thing to do. Because on the other end of those type of conversations and those types of situations with resistance, you're releasing energy, you're liberating energy, instead of doing something that is against your intuition, which would be like, I don't want a banana. And then you get a banana and you're like, I didn't want it.
Damn this banana. That is a really cool way of explaining that. Because like we were kind of reflecting back on, I think a lot of people try and approach manifestation as a way they can like, I don't want to feel like this, so I manifest this, I don't have to feel this.
Totally.
Which is sort of circumventing the whole thing, which is one of my core sort of perceptions I have, which is we are the most powerful creators in our reality, and that we're internal to external creators.
Right.
So, interestingly enough, I'm going to go out and say it. You have such a fascinating sort of blueprint, and what I mean by blueprint is sort of the let's just call it like the energy you're resonating, the beingness you're resonating. Our bodies are like physical blueprints, right?
Right.
But we got like multi-leveled blueprints. This is a way I talk about it, at least.
Cool. I love them. I'm with you.
I feel like you would be. I feel like you're really getting this, use that terminology. And
two Italians arguing in a pizza shop right now.
Yeah, right. Well, we got to pivot to make it.
I love this.
See, this is my favorite part of co-creating in life, which is you take this stuff and you just have fun with it, because
We're gonna have
that's
we're gonna have a good like 4 minutes of podcast on here. It'll be good.
I agree. So the blueprint.
All right.
I gotta say, and it actually ties into what I'm saying. The blueprint you have is one of such really uninhibited joy, creation. You carry the blueprint that I have seen. I've tapped into this before. I call it like the kind of like some people have used the word new earth. I'm a little bit leery about using some of these terms because sometimes they mean some things to some people, some things to another people. But the way I look at it, all of us here who are really tuning in, who are being conscious, about ourselves and how we interact with the world around us, we hold a certain kind of blueprint. We hold a certain kind of vibe, kind of like we're all Legos, right? Building blocks. Yeah. And yours is very fascinating because not only have you been really conscious about what you're doing, like you said, you've been more actively exploring it around the time you were 14, which is interesting because of the youth of your body doing that. But even more, do you mind if I ask you some questions? Because I'm really fascinated by all this and how you connect.
Yeah.
Cool. So when you started to really consciously explore this kind of stuff, awareness stuff, what was your, as far as you remember, your primary motivator? If we'll give it that term for now. We'll go with that.
Well, I guess like when I first started, it was really all around confidence and like mental toughness. It was all around basketball. Basketball was my life. I was addicted to basketball. And just so in it. And what's interesting to me is there was a trauma. I just never thought of this, so it's cool. I had a sexual trauma when I was a kid. And what I also noticed, and I just made this correlation, is so I was like really obsessed with basketball, really obsessed with skateboarding, and really obsessed with video games. And I don't know if I really have that type of obsession now to the same degree. Maybe I do, but in a healthier way. But I'm just, curious if that has any correlation. Kind of sidetracked, but
No, it's interesting. So you had, because the trauma is an interesting one too, because this is a correlation. Not that, and to, even people who will be like, who are connecting with us right now, who are watching this and interacting with us, because even though this is a recording, it's also happening right now. So we're all kind of connecting on this together. And, to you watching this, I really want to also invite you to connect with Kyle and I, because I feel like, there's this overarching synchronicity here. Because, like, for example, mine may not have been specifically basketball, but I was super, super, super into video games too. So much so that I wrote an essay to my mom because she was so against getting me games. I wrote her a persuasive essay. Like, these are the reasons you should get me, Super Mario Brothers.
So awesome.
Right? And it's an interesting thing because there was also trauma for me in my life as well. And I believe that many of us who are on this path have experienced or have that resonance of trauma, especially at kind of a young age. Like, we're sort of, I hesitate to use the word older souls, but let's actually just say we're a little bit more switched on souls. We might have, not better, not worse, just there was a bit more of an awareness there. And it seems as though there's this mutual trigger that's happened for many, that they have this awareness when they're younger. They have some kind of trauma experience that's like a catalyst almost they harbor. And then there's some things they get so focused in, almost to like a transcendent state. Like, I bet you that happened for you when you were doing some of this, like the sports and stuff. You would almost transcend reality when you were doing that, right?
Totally, yeah.
And, you know, to you who are tuning in, I bet you did something. I mean, it didn't have to be video games or basketball, but, you know, some people do art or dance, martial arts. For some people, it was sex. Like, I've known
Right.
very, very spiritual people who had just lots of sex because it would also, you know, transcend their state. And then they would get the trauma of some of the, you know, sexual stigma that goes on. I mean, whether you're a guy or a girl, that can happen. So
Mm-hmm.
there are those connecting points right there. So taking that, what you said, and taking sort of the how you were so into that self, like the confidence, the improvement, the awareness at that young age. From your awareness, did it just sort of happen like I want to have this, and then you just sort of switched on and went for it? Or is there some form of catalyst that you are aware of?
As far as like what led me on the personal growth path, yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't know, remember the exact moment, but really what it feels like is just, yeah, I want to be better at basketball. Like, I'm sick of this because I work so hard and my results weren't matching up to what I knew my potential was. And that led me on that path. And then of course that led me on like so many other rabbit holes,
Yeah.
with like personal growth events. And like, actually when I was 18, I landed a job with just a dude who was a great mentor of mine and like has like his whole personal growth thing going on. Just a well-known person in the space. I don't resonate with him much anymore, but just been these series of just incredible synchronicities just from people that I've met and just catalysts that have happened and events that I went to, and just this just fascination with self-exploration, this fascination with just personal growth and really stepping into more of who I actually am. And I would say a big thing though for me was actually, so when I was a kid, 16, I was never super good with women. That was like, I wasn't like a total like putz, but I also at the same time wasn't just, yeah, I hadn't kissed a girl when I was 16. And I remember I started out playing basketball at a new school. We had a scrimmage. Scrimmages, for those who don't know, it's not an actual game. And in basketball, there's 4 quarters. The coaches decided to do a 5th quarter. And for some reason, I'm like, all right, this is going to be my Kobe Bryant time. I get the ball. I take like 2 dribbles. My leg breaks. I transferred to this new school my junior year to play basketball. I'm out for the whole season. Fast forward, I'm at my grandma's house with a hip to toe cast on an iPad. That was pretty much my island at that point. And I was like, I mean, you know, being the 16-year-old boy that I was like, how to get girls, Google. And then go to YouTube and I see just these dudes that are just approaching women and they're like busting through their fears and just starting conversations with strangers. And me, I thought it was so cool. And it opened up this new perception and realm of possibility for me. And then I was freaking stoked. I remember I was with my friend Amir. We went to go watch my team's basketball game. I had a brace, so I wasn't in my cast. Then I was stoked because we were going to the mall after, and I'm like, all right, finally going to do this. And then like I started talking to girls, and just the concept of like feeling the fear and doing it anyways, and actually like, well, you talked about desires, like going for what you actually want. So for me, that was a huge catalyst and opened up so much. And I really think just in this spiritual personal growth community, there's a lot of like mental rehearsal of the concepts, and that's awesome. And then there's also a time where it's like, all right, it's time for me to just be fearlessly authentic, show up, do the things that freaking scare me, confront my deepest, darkest demons, and like actually step up and realize that it's all just love, which is kind of the weird paradox of it all.
That was pretty darn cool, if I do say so myself. I love that. And I love even how you wove in paradox. That's been a big one. That's been a big one as well, because I think so many of us approach this from such a 2-dimensional aspect. that as we're becoming more and more aware, we're kind of discovering there's less of that analog in our lives, a lot more of that like just multifaceted way of approaching anything. And you can have more than one, active at the same time as well. So, we go from being more like this or this, is this right or that right? Which one's my life path? Right. Kind of, instead of like, this is it, including the stuff that maybe I'm really afraid to look at, including that stuff.
Yeah.
That was really cool, Kyle.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. I love how you talk about authenticity, because that's a big one, right? I hear a lot of people talk about it, and it's been this, to be perfectly blunt, it's been a very interesting experience for me to hear that, because from some places people talk about, they go on about authenticity, but it rings a little hollow when I hear it from some sources, because sometimes, it's being presented more as a concept than actually live, which I can relate, because even, no matter how far I felt like I've gone, there's always a new layer that approaches me in my life, a new chance for me to be authentic, a new, so I found it's kind of like a never unfolding journey. And I once upon a time thought, hey, I can be so aware, I can totally like ace all this stuff, and I will just be like this, yes, my child, what is it? And boy, that got
got old real quick.
Yeah, that one ended up being real, like one of the most inauthentic things I've ever experienced in my life, and caused me to really take a good look at why I thought I needed to be that way, and even authenticity around spirituality, because I think a lot of us have had these perceptions of what it is to be spiritual leaders, spiritual visionary, person who talked about spiritual stuff, a person who does this, whatever, it's, I think we have these preconceptions. Totally. What's your perspective about shifting identities? Because that's a big one.
Yeah. So good. So I love how you were like, gave me like the most awesome, like spiritual rant. And then you're like, so what do you think about shifting identities? That was awesome. So yeah, what comes to me in this moment is like what you're saying. It's like, you probably thought you had to be like Alma, like the big spiritual guru, and like show up super lovingly and super present. And I think that's well-intentioned and innocent. And I also feel like so first of all, I think spirituality is like, it's just a word. It's a context to govern a state of consciousness. And I don't necessarily think it'll be like a word, like in a certain period of time. But what I'll say is like, kind of like the context and the essence of spirituality for me is like non-resistance to everything. So it's like not being resistant to hugging someone and letting them know how much you care. And then also not being resistant to that part of you that wants to call them a fucking asshole. Sorry if I can't curse. I can redo that.
Please be you. Curse away. Do the you that you are.
Feels better. Awesome. So, and even that though, that was interesting, right? Because even as I just shared, I corrected myself and I was like, oh, but is that okay? So I think that was really interesting how that tied into the question that you asked me and how I shared.
I do too, actually. Yeah, that is kind of interesting. Actually, if you don't mind us tangenting a little bit, can I poke at that?
Let's tangent it.
I love it. So like, just in that moment, because I think so many of us relate to that, because, hands up, there's been times I've been like speaking, I'll do something, talk to someone, and I'll have like a fuck that wants to like come out of me. And sometimes I'm so loving and I'm so, like you said, almost there. And then suddenly that wants to come up. And sometimes in that split second, I'll have that little, is that really PR? Should you be saying, is that okay? Right. And I think a lot of us, tuning in here, I think we're all sort of taking a look at that and just like, so what I'm curious about is if you'd be willing to kind of share with us what went through you in that split second when you were checking, and then on the flip side, when you caught the awareness of it. Like, I'd love to see that deconstructed.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was just cool to notice that and just like relate that to your question. And two, yeah, it was more so like, oh, is this appropriate to say on her show? So I went through that super quick, and it also wasn't necessary because I could have just been my truth. And then it was well intentioned too.
Of course.
But like, I also could have just not said anything. And then, I don't know, I felt like it was pretty innocent either way. Like, I could have said something, I don't know, it wasn't really a big thing.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't, was it?
I think a lot of times people, we approach situations, and I speak from this myself, like one of my soul's like lessons is going from cautiousness into trust. And so many of us are kind of like tiptoeing, like, oh, do I say that thing? I don't know if I should say this. And it's like we're mentally playing chess all day, and it's exhausting, instead of just like, here's who I am.
Wow.
You know?
That really, really resonated. You did?
Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. You really are a jack of all trades, huh? Video games, basketball.
Oh no, I
chess.
literally meant like the mental chess part, not like I don't even know how to play real chess.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm not a chess master just yet. Give me a few years, another lifetime. We'll check it out.
Kind of a big difference.
Yeah. I guess depends on your perception. So I really dig that. I dig your exploration with me here, and authenticity. I really want to crack that nut open. Mostly because I'm feeling it a lot here. And a lot of times when we're doing these shows, I make the intention that I'm connecting with kind of the collective consciousness that is participating in this, because we are all collectively participating. We're talking, you're listening, watching, tuning in, but it's always a co-creation. So, and I think that's one of the things that, from the human level, we're not always aware of, because we go like, okay, well, we're doing this now, Kyle and I are interacting, but, you guys are kind of on your own later. And I think all of us here pretty much perceive that that's not what's really happening. It's all right now.
Mm-hmm. Like right now.
You're right now. So.
Okay, so like this moment.
I think, is this how we get stuck in an infinity loop?
You're already stuck in one.
Kyle, you're too fun. I'm gonna have to wrangle you into another show at some point. This is already being too much fun. Too much fun for one show. We definitely have to exponential this. So
I will non-resistantly get wrangled into another show. So
perfect. So so like I said, tuning into all of this, tuning into like the feeling, and really kind of poking at that feeling. And I point here because I collectively tune in kind of through the heart. The heart includes the mind, includes the body. So it's sort of like what I call the central hub. And, there is this deep, almost yearning to be authentic. Like, it's more than just a concept. It's more than just kind of like an Oprah snippet, like, authentic, it's
right.
It's like this real, almost visceral yearning to be so real with ourselves, with the people in our lives. And, from what I'm feeling here, a lot of it comes from not only kind of just starting from square one and being real with ourselves, because we've told ourselves so many stories like of what we need to be happy and all those other ways that we box ourselves in. And then we're collectively not only trying to figure ourselves out, but come back to that place of like, how can I relate to you beyond the ways that, you know, society has said it's okay, in the sense of like even redefining love, redefining relationships, you know, because we got, here's the romantic one and here's the friend one and you're that guy that I kind of go like that too, you know, on the street. And and what I'm curious about, because you're a real switched on dude, you're really switched on, just at a multidimensional level. Like, I get you're here, you're human, you're Kyle having this experience, but when I tune into you, you have this whole I said blueprint earlier. You have this whole blueprint of like laying down a new perception model of reality, and which is pretty cool. I dig it. And a lot of what you have there is you being authentically you being vulnerable you, because you're very vulnerable. I get you're human too. I get you have, you know, we all have our stuff, but you kind of create a space where you're being that, and a lot of people are able to then connect with you in that space, which is what makes radical transformations. Mm-hmm. So what is your perception then on authenticity? If a person's sitting there, you know, they might be tuning in, they might be listening, and they would really like to be authentic with others, but maybe they've gotten really burned. Maybe they're not really sure how to open that up. Like, I'd love to hear some of your perceptions about real deal authenticity.
Yeah, no, that's so. It starts with yourself. Like, that's the most important piece. And we cannot create connection, which we so desperately crave and want, and intimacy, from a place of disconnection. And that's what a lot of people are doing. We're disconnectedly trying to get to be in relationship with people, trying to have intimate conversations with people, but we're disconnected. And it's like, I'm going to quote one of my mentors, Orrin Harris, but he says, you can't make peace when you're in pieces. And so many of us were trying to connect with other people without connecting with ourselves first. And I think that's okay. And also, like, let's connect deeper with ourselves and like really like meet our essence with another human being's essence. Because it is different too, because, you know, at the one reality that you're in where you're like, well, I can't connect with anyone. Right. And then you flip the mirror back because they're just mirroring you because they are you. It's like, oh, well, I'm not connected with myself right now. I'm not in my heart right now. And if you're not in your heart, right, how can you ever expect to connect with someone else at the heart level? But if you're at your head, you're sure as fuck going to meet them at their head. And you guys are just going to go into this mental thing. And you're like, hey, I really want to know how you're doing because I feel like you're hurting on the inside. But I'm just going to say, how was your day, Chuck? How's work? And it's like, what are we doing? And it takes those people who are willing to take stands for authenticity and to even call it out, to be like, hey, like, what's really going on? Like, I see you. What are you doing? And to like really take a stand for another human being, because that's the only way we're ever going to evolve. And to try and base how you're going to behave off the insane model that society is right now is a recipe for disaster. You know, it's like, if we're going to look at freaking places where our food's genetically modified and people are working in cubes for 8 hours a day and say, okay, let me base how I show up off of that. Like, let me just give you the end of the movie there. You're fucked. And like, don't do that. Like, just show up as you. And sometimes even just tuning into like, what do I really like? Just some questions like, how can I make this moment even more intimate? Like, where am I hiding right now? What would it look like to show up 100 times more authentic? What do I really want to say? And even just questions like that can put you in a whole new frame of reality, to where that same person who was constantly not being connected with you, all of a sudden, the more connected you got with yourself, it's like, whoa, I actually got to hear all these things about Susie or Jeff, whatever. And you know, it's probably, I'm sure you get this a lot where people are just like, you barely meet them. And then it's like 2 minutes in, they're telling you their whole life story. But that's all because you're connected with yourself and people feel safe. And, you know, you don't want to dump all your crap on someone who can't even handle their own stuff. It's like, oh no, that's not safe. Let me go somewhere else.
This is overflowing. Must go over here. Yeah.
Right.
I feel you. And, you know, for you tuning in, like, if you feel like, oh my gosh, that's me, you know, and I want to connect with people, but I feel like I'm overflowing. You know, one thing that really helped me, because I've been a lot of my life at capacity, like, you know, I definitely was not always this way. I definitely, you know, and there are days that I wake up and I'm like, I have space in my container for me. And that's what I'm honoring right now. Totally. So, you know, for you listening, it's not like a linear endpoint. I definitely perceive that we work in cycles. I definitely perceive that, you know, we are not intended to fit the frame of what anyone else is telling you. And like I say every time when you've tuned into my show, you know, I say this, you know, you're not meant to be me. You're not meant to be anyone else. This is just like the bits and pieces that resonate with you and you go, yep, that was the one I was looking for. Thank you. And, you know, flow with that. But I will say, if you feel like you're one of the people who's really, you know, overwhelmed or at capacity, the question you might ask yourself is, am I giving myself permission to be in this state? Am I giving myself permission to not bring anyone on board? Because sometimes we get that way when we have not established boundaries or have not said authentic no's to people who are kind of trying to impose themselves on us. So we unconsciously pile onto ourselves, so we can almost be like, yeah, sorry, full up. And then we're like, why am I so full up all the time? So that's just something to, thought I'd put that out there that seemed relevant to this little bit we're going on. Yeah, right? I'm really enjoying this bit of a multi-dimensional ping pong we got going on here.
We're rocking it.
I know, right? Yes. So, actually, you know what I really wanted to share, because you're tuning in, you probably see us keep doing this, and I really want you to be in on this, because I thought it was kind of the fun of the synchronicity of how Kyle and I connected. And I think this is so key here, since we're talking about synchronicity, since we're talking about connections, we're talking about authenticity. So give a little background. I actually found Kyle just kind of randomly through my feed. If you haven't, you know, checked him out. Well, checked him out here. But if you haven't checked him out otherwise, I'd suggest go check him out. He's very active on Facebook, and we'll make sure we provide a link to that, or any other way that they can connect with you too. But, you know, super active guy. I actually found him, I noticed him because he created kind of it's when you created that comedy video where you were kind of laughing about how life coaches do the.
We actually met before that. I remember, because we met at Thrive in 2016. Yes, in San Diego, right?
Kyle, I remember. Yeah, it was Thrive. It was Thrive. Cool. But that's when I saw your video, that's when I connected it. That's how I'll put it. Totally. Because the moment I saw that, I'm like, I know him. Mm-hmm. I know him. Like, this is a dude who is, you know, this is a homie. Like, I get this. So, you know, and then I saw that, and I'm like, you know, feeling into the synchronicity of that. And there was just such an incredible amount of almost, I want to say, like, unbridled, fun, playful energy. Like, imagine, you know, almost 2 7-year-olds. They're like, want to go, like, run and catch bugs and then, like, poke things? Yeah. And then, like, you know, just running. That was that kind of energy. And I'm like, okay, we can play with some of that energy. That's pretty cool. So I noticed a picture of this on his wall, which I thought was very funny, because, as you know, if you've tuned in, especially recently, I've been like doing this a lot. And I'm thinking, interesting, I wonder what that means to him, because obviously that caught my attention, because that's been in my energetic field for a little while. And so I reached out to you, Kyle, and what was your initial impression when I showed you that?
I thought you were messing with me, because so to like give you guys a backstory. So this thing, if you put it, I don't know, maybe you guys have played this game as a kid, but if you put this under your waist and someone looks at it, they get to punch you. So her message was pretty funny because she wasn't even aware of it, which was awesome. She sends me a picture of that thing and was like, "Hey, what does this mean?" Like, and like, you know, my 14-year-old brain was like, that's a joke. And then apparently she was pretty darn serious and kind of pretty multidimensional real quick. And then she's like, "You want to go on my show? It'd be awesome." I'm like, dang, I got to start posting more of these things.
And I love that, because that's like one of the fun ways we can show synchronicity, because you're not going to find that in any, marketing, like the ways that I've gotten invited onto shows, step one.
Right, totally. You open the book, damn it, they're going to punch me.
And what made it great, though, and the fun part of the synchronicity is, for both of us, it ended up being this big joke. And at an even higher synchronistic level, I'm like, I felt a little set up by my higher self, going like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be funny." And if I had been sort of like, if I'd been like, "Oh, I don't know, I haven't really talked to Kyle that much since we, connected," like it would be kind of weird to just be like, "What's this, man? What's up?" I didn't bother with any like, "Hey there, Kyle, how are you?" I just like, "What's this?" Right? Like just launch it, like, because as I was just about to scroll away from it, it's like, no, like ask, and I'm like, okay. But imagine, for those of you tuning in, if you have that if you're too much in the mind, you go, "Oh, but that's not, like, he might think I'm weird, or that's not how it's done." But but then Kyle just went with it. He wasn't just like, "Oh, hello, ma'am, yes, it's," he was just like, "Are you serious?" Like that. That was like your response, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Are you for real? And but then of course it's kind of evolved into having this really cool connection where we've now all created this just because, right?
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? So we're coming towards the close of our show here, but I would really, I'm going to really just like open up the floor here. I wanted to really invite you to tune in. Not that you haven't been tuning in, but invite you to kind of tune in and see, what would you like to share, kind of as some closing thoughts, like what is feeling. I don't care if you give me like a recipe for pie, which would be pretty cool because I love pie. But right? Yeah. Anything you feel like sharing at all, I would love to hear, and I'm sure that we would all love to hear that as well.
Yeah, just love all you guys. Like, it's such a blessing and just an honor to be here and to be able to just share my gifts. And for me, it hasn't always been easy for me to like share authentically, and there's still new layers of that for me, and there's more that wants to express and come through me. And I would just encourage and honor every single person to, as weird as you may think you are, as kind of out there you think certain ideas and passions of yours may be, to really, really just honor who you are. And one of the quickest ways you can do that is just by being fearlessly freaking authentic. Like, you can even write down 5 to 10 things that you will do in the next 2 weeks that are just like, let's do this. This is game time. For example, having uncomfortable conversations. Just, we're moving into a phase of our evolution where non-embodied leaders aren't going to get far. And I'm sure a lot of you guys listening know a lot already. So now it's time to really like go in. Not that you haven't been, I don't know any of you guys personally, but it's like, even write a list of like what's taking up your presence. Because a lot of times what happens is we have all these tabs up, like a computer. It's like, oh, still got to have that conversation. Still haven't spoke on stage. Still haven't shared that one message that I wanted to share. And it's like all these things are still taking up bandwidth in our consciousness. And to truly just step into powerfully the direction of your dreams and realize like, this is literally your life. Like this is like a waking dream right now. Like, what are you doing all this stuff that you hate? Like really, really step into your passion, to your truth, into, as weird as it may be, you're going to pave the path for so many people. Like we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Martin Luther King, if it wasn't for Rosa Parks, if it wasn't for like all these people who are just like, you know what, I'm just going to freaking be myself right now. And it's those people that change the world. And if you're listening to this, there's something within you that wants to be expressed. And I would strongly invite you into it.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Well, yeah, for sure.
That was super cool.
That was awesome.
I really, really enjoyed this show. And, you know, I can feel that every one of us here have gotten something really valuable from this connection, from this co-creation with you. And, you know, for those of you tuning in, you know how to find the description for this. And if you don't, you can head over to daniellelynn.com, and I have the descriptions for the shows on there, which will have info to connect with Kyle. But if you have any quick way for them to connect with you too, you want to share, that's totally cool too.
Sure, yeah. Just follow me on Facebook. It's Kyle Lipton. And then you can follow me on Instagram at Kyle_Lipton. So yeah, those are the two social media channels I'm primarily on, and going to be branching out to YouTube pretty soon.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to having you on there too.
Yeah,
all right.
Same here.
Well, thank you, Kyle, and thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been a fun episode. We will see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.